You're listening to BioTalk with Rich Bendis, the only podcast focused on the BioHealth Capital Region. Each episode, we'll talk to leaders in the industry to break down the biggest topics happening today in biohealth.
Hi, this is Rich Bendis. I'm your host for BioTalk. We're doing something a little unusual today. I have corralled 3 dynamic female entrepreneurs from the state of Maryland who are all going to be on the same podcast today. And we're going to see who trips over each other first today. But I guarantee you, this isn't orchestrated. So we're going to play this by ear as a first-time triple podcast. But I think all the listeners are going to enjoy this. And they have a special designation, and that's why they're on this podcast together. And they've all participated in the world's largest MedTech Accelerator program, which is called the MedTech Innovator, which just completed within the last 2 weeks. And they had 1,150 companies apply to be in this 2023 cohort. And only 61 out of 1,150 were selected. And out of that, there were 21 states represented and 16 countries. But guess what? Maryland, out of the 21 states, got 3 MedTech winners. All 3 of them are female entrepreneurs, which is exciting. And I'm sure the listeners are going to be glad to see this representation from the state of Maryland, which will even go further into California later this year, which we'll talk about. So let me introduce them. And after I introduce them, they're going to do self-introductions because no one can introduce them better than themselves. So the 3 winners we have from Maryland of the MedTech Innovator Contest are Ellington West, who's the CEO and co-founder of Sonavi Labs. Hi, Ellington.
Hello.
Welcome back to BioTalk. We did one with Ellington a little while ago, if you want to go back and listen to that. And then she's going to tell you how she's progressed today since we did the last BioTalk. And then we also have Samantha Scott, which goes by Sam, who's the founder and CEO of JuneBrain. Sam, welcome to BioTalk.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi. And then Michelle Crawley, president of Xcision Medical Systems. Michelle, welcome to BioTalk.
Thank you very much.
And by the way, Ellington and Sam are from Baltimore, and Michelle's from Columbia, Maryland. So 3 Maryland Terps here, companies. And I think Michelle actually does have a tie to the University of Maryland, which she can talk about. So let's start with some introductions. We're going to start with Ellington first. And Ellington, let's give a little background on yourself and your company.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. It's always wonderful participating and also being an active listener of this podcast. So Ellington West, CEO and co-founder of Sonavi Labs here. I had the pleasure of licensing our technology out of Hopkins back in 2017. And we have developed a device named Felix. So it's a hardware software solution. So Felix listens to the sound of a patient's lung, analyzes those sounds, and then shares that actionable data with care teams anywhere in the world. So our goal, our aim, and our focus is to be predictive of asthma attacks and COPD exacerbation. And on the acute side, we can actually diagnose pneumonia in less than 40 seconds without an X-ray or provider present. We started with a real focus on global health, partnering with the Gates Foundation, because there was one child under the age of 5 dying every 36 seconds from pneumonia, which is detectable and treatable. And so we ran full steam ahead to really create a global and accessible solution there. And then we looked in our own backyard here in Maryland and recognized that African-American children were 3 times more likely to die from an asthma attack than any other patient population right here in Baltimore. And so we wanted to create another, again, accessible and easy to use device. So our software runs different algorithms, but it's all processed through one singular device and platform. So we love the opportunity that we have to now build into different indications. And again, I'm thrilled to be here today and to be with these wonderful women.
Thank you, Ellington. But, you told us a little bit about the company, but you didn't say anything about your own personal background and how you became an entrepreneur. They'd like to learn that too, if you could do that briefly.
That's a great question. And thank you. So I always talk about my company first. It's like my baby. I forget my identity in the process. So I actually come from a sales background. I was the director of sales for a national healthcare company prior to jumping off of the entrepreneurial diving board. And actually, I did so because my father, Dr. Jim West, is actually the principal inventor of this technology, professor at Hopkins with 250 patents. And he said to me, and he actually invented the electret microphone. So the microphone in all cell phones and microphones, the one I'm speaking to on right now. And so when he said, listen, we have an opportunity to change the world and transform the way that respiratory care is delivered, I decided to, go full steam ahead. I also, through this process, have had the honor of being appointed by our former governor to sit on the Maryland Life Sciences Advisory Board. So really being able to pull in that expertise from not only my sales and commercialization background, but to really be able to apply that to getting this device really out and commercialized is kind of the intersection of where my leadership, I think, plays a key role in our organization.
Thank you for your personal background. We'll see you tomorrow at the Life Science Advisory Board meeting in Baltimore.
Can't wait.
Yeah, right. Next, we have Samantha Scott, founder and CEO JuneBrain. Sam?
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Samantha Scott, but I go by Sam. I started JuneBrain a few years ago, 2017, a few years ago now. My background is a combination of neuroengineer, so my PhD is in biomedical engineering, and I really focused heavily on understanding patients who have retinal disease from a brain point of view. So how does loss of vision impact the brain? How does sight restoration with a medical device impact the brain? So that is my happy place. That's the intersection between neurological understanding of the body versus the retina, so the eye-brain interface. So I started the company soon after I was diagnosed with a neuromuscular disease. So I switched from being a scientist to a patient. And it was really the experience of being challenged with my physician's understanding how disease is progressing only based on my subjective input, not based on any objective measures. That's the challenge that inspired me to start JuneBrain. And right now we're developing a device called the NeuroEye. So it's a telehealth eye scanning technology that automatically understands how your disease is progressing via eye measures. So that's whether you have active retinal disease or active neurological disease. And the nice thing about what we're developing is that it combines AI with accessibility. So our goal is to bring OCT, it's called optical coherence tomography. It's a technology used to scan the eye. Our goal is to bring this into more accessible settings so that it can be accessed by people who are severely disabled or in rural communities and don't typically have access to these specialized technologies. That's it in a nutshell.
Well, thanks for the intro, but the name's interesting, JuneBrain.
Yes.
How did you come up with JuneBrain?
Yeah, so I am a military brat, Army and Air Force brat. My mom likes guys in uniforms, but one of the places I loved to live the most was in the South, and I love the name Junebug. It just stuck on me. So JuneBrain, we were founded in June. June is one of the brain awareness months. It just worked.
And it just so happens we're doing this podcast in June. So everything's aligned around June for you, right?
Yes.
Sam? Okay, thank you. Our third guest is Michelle Crawley, President, Xcision Medical Systems and Columbia. Michelle, a little background.
Okay, well, and just like Ellington, I actually was totally prepared to just talk about my company. I really wasn't even thinking about me. So the company is based in Columbia, Maryland. We are a technology transfer out of the University of Maryland. Our founder and CEO is a medical physicist who was the chair of medical physics at University of Maryland. I have taken over being the president, but our founder and CEO is still with us, Dr. Cedric Yu. We make a stereotactic radiation therapy device that treats breast cancer in as little as one single treatment. And we are looking to prove the patient population for which surgery could be obviated. So it would be a massive change from the way that breast cancer is currently being treated. So there's about 20 million women that actually get affected by breast cancer over a 10-year period, almost 2 million women a year. And in many places in the world, there's a massive shortage of radiation therapy treatment devices. And breast cancer represents about 25 to 50% of all cancer patients that are in radiation oncology centers around the world. So by being able to improve the efficiency with which you're treating these patients, you can actually improve the overall healthcare paradigm in many places in the world. Obviously, it's also great for the patient too. In our country, we take for granted that if you get breast cancer and you need to be treated, you can just get in. In many places in the world, the wait times are measured in months. So waiting 6 months is not an unusual thing. So that's what we do. And that's where we're at. We've been in business since 2006 when the development started. We got our 510K at the end of 2017. And so we are commercial. We have 4 treating centers around the world. And my background, I actually have been in radiation oncology for about 25 years. I've been here at Xcision for 12 years. Before that, I was with a really big company that's in this space. And before that, I worked on the space shuttle program. So I have more of an engineering background. I came out of aerospace. So I love this business. And radiation oncology is actually medicine that works. It really does what it's supposed to do. So it's a fabulous business working with clinicians that are really helping people treat serious diseases, and giving them the tools that they need is just a real pleasure. So thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Congratulations to all 3 of you. I'm going to deviate from the script, which my producer, Andy Eckert, knows I do that all the time. So I'm going to come back to each of you with a different question than what you were prepared for. So what would you consider to be the latest major milestone that you have achieved? And what is the next major milestone that you're searching to achieve? And go back to Ellington to answer those. And then we're going to get a little more into the company and the technology after these questions.
Wonderful. Well, I love this question because I think that as leaders, we often forget to remind ourselves of the wins, right? Because we're always chasing the next thing and getting to that ultimate finish line. And everyone's is also defined a little bit differently. So when I think about the most recent wins that we've truly been celebrating, it is along the regulatory path. We are 510K cleared for our hardware, and we just completed our submission for our software as a medical device designation. So we should hear back in the next couple of weeks, up to 90 days, but hopefully in the next few weeks because we've had a lot of engagement. So thrilled by that and very proud of our team and what we've done on that front. And then what I have on the horizon is closing a financing round that we have. We have soft circled a very large majority of it already and hope to close in the next few weeks, if not months. So thrilled by that and knowing that that's going to also give us the horsepower that we need to keep going as fast as we can. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you. I think all 3 of you are going to be doing ABR, right?
Yeah.
Always be raising, right?
Always.
Always. Okay. So,
I didn't know what that was.
Yeah, there we go. But ABR, you're going to be all in the ABR mode. And I think Sam was talking about that. So Samantha Scott, Sam with JuneBrain, latest major milestone you achieved, and what's the next one to conquer?
Yeah, that is a great question. I agree, Ellington. We do need to recognize the wins. I would say our latest accomplishment on the device side is redefining our headset in a way that's more usable and accessible. So we have a prototype that works well, but what we've done is kind of translate that a bit further to make sure that it's comfortable for patients with a variety of disability. So that was a huge milestone. Our next upcoming milestone, which is related, so fundraising, we are always fundraising. So we're aiming to reach $1 million raised, and we've reached 815,000 so far. So hoping to close that last portion of the first $1 million, as well as submit to the FDA next month for our software.
Great. So if anybody has $185,000 that's just sitting there that they would like to invest, JuneBrain and Samantha Scott is willing to talk to you.
Yes.
And we'll give you
pennies.
You take pennies. Okay.
I probably shouldn't say that.
Yeah. So if anybody has 10,850,000 pennies, then she'll take that as well. So lastly, Michelle, major milestone and goal.
So the last major milestone was the closing of a Series A for $7 million, which was thrilled about that. And of course, the next one will be closing a Series B before the end of the calendar year for 18 to 20 million. Actually, we have a lot of intellectual property at Xcision. As I mentioned, our CEO is definitely a scientist and he is an inventor. We have a lot of patents and we're going to be developing. GammaPod is our first product, but we have intellectual property to develop our other products. And so we've actually started it a few years ago, but now we're going to be starting it in earnest with a team. And we're looking to fundraise to do that and to commercialize the technology in the United States. So I would also say that we had sold our first European system and got it installed and got it clinical and got the customer happy. And so we actually sold our next 2 machines in Italy. And so our next thing is delivering those machines and getting those customers happy, because happy customers is what sells your equipment too. So.
Great. Well, good luck to all 3 of you in your next fundraising efforts. Let's go back a little bit about the companies. And for Ellington, your Felix hardware harnesses the power of AI. And that really helps to identify and track respiratory abnormalities. And how do you see AI technology, which everybody's talking about, but really, and there's the good and the bad of it. You know, you're hearing what's good about AI and what's some of the challenges with AI. But how do you see that evolving in the future, and how will it impact the way diseases are diagnosed and managed, especially related to your technology?
Yeah, I think it's such a great question, and it's obviously at the forefront of everyone's mind. It's funny, when I first co-founded the company, it was really hard to get people's minds wrapped around really trusting AI, right? And we will always be working towards not just providers feeling comfortable with utilizing it, but more importantly, patients being able to trust the personalization that can be achieved through AI when it comes to diagnosing and managing clinical challenges, diseases, and different disease states. Now, I think that there are 2 different conversations. I think that when we look at AI and the ethics outside of healthcare, that is a wild, wild west. And I think that in healthcare, we have regulatory bodies that are currently trying to really navigate and understand and set the appropriate parameters that will allow us all to be successful and for all of us to really benefit from the existence of these models. Now, where I think that there are huge opportunities is that, and I'll use auscultation, which is utilizing a stethoscope, and a physician listening through a stethoscope is the act of auscultation, right? And so when a physician is using their stethoscope, they only agree 70% of the time on what it is that they heard. But when you have Felix, our device, there's a 98% accuracy in our ability to identify the presence of those abnormalities. And even more specifically, when it comes to something like pneumonia, we also have a 98% accuracy in our ability to diagnose. And that's because we trained the device on X-ray data, as well as an adjudication panel of some of the best pulmonologists in the world. But then came the issue of the FDA, who says, well, what's really the gold standard, and how do we know, and how do we train these models? And those are real questions that still we have to work towards really creating a strong base and foundation for. But the reality is that when we see this shortage of physicians across the globe, and we even think about burnout, and we think about the challenges that we're seeing in rural America today, going back and citing exactly what Michelle said in terms of wait times for all of our patients, what we have to do is think about creative ways to extend and augment the ability of our providers. And here's what I know for sure is that there will never be a world where physicians are not in the loop. They are essential. There is a human factor, an empathy, a bedside manner, and an understanding that a machine can never duplicate. But what we can do is create a higher level of confidence in point of care decision making. And again, getting even deeper into the personalization of solutions for our patients. And so I'm very optimistic about what this world is going to look like as we continue to layer in AI, but we have to do it at a pace that is ensuring inclusivity of all of our patients so that the data sets that we're training are reflective of the true populations that we are serving. And that's something that's been at the forefront of my mind for our company from the very beginning, was how can we ensure that our data is inclusive, that we're clear about who it is that we serve, and then we reverse engineer that to make sure that they're reflected in our patient population. So I think that there are so many applications of AI, whether it it is imaging, from a radiologist standpoint, where we're seeing that AI, when layered in, is actually more accurate, again, than radiologists. In the case of auscultation, we're seeing the same. But where it excites me the most is in early detection. And that's where I get very excited in terms of oncology and really being able to nip something in the bud before it springs. And even in our case of respiratory diseases, being predictive of an asthma attack or a COPD exacerbation. And so the opportunities are really endless. We just have to make sure that we are coming together as a community to ensure that we understand the risks and that we can respond to them with the right parameters that ensure that our patients are well taken care of.
Thank you, Ellington. I think what's interesting when I listened to all three of you and I looked at some of the backgrounds, there may be some synergies for your companies to work together and collaborate. So, and when I was looking at Samantha, you're interested in inclusion too. And basically, you're developing tools to remotely and quantitatively evaluate the progression of diseases like MS using retinal image data. But can you share, how do you think these tools will change the patient experience, particularly in some of these underserved communities, which also Ellington was talking about?
Sure. Yeah, it's so important. So one of the first things we did was extensive customer discovery, and that included speaking with as many patients as possible to understand their current experience and to inform how we design our device. And the experience that they shared with us, and it's an experience that I have personally been challenged with, is many patients, especially with neurological disease or retinal disease, the way that providers currently track their disease is through self-report. And it's very subjective. It's a result of providers having limited bandwidth in their clinics for patients to come in more frequently. So patients are asked to call into the clinic when they have a new symptom or if anything has changed to let the provider know, and the provider may use that subjective information to make a change to their treatment regimen. The problem with that is that, one, when it comes to symptoms, it is not always reflective of subclinical disease activity. So if you have MS, for example, you could possibly have an increase in your lesion load or something going on in the cortex that doesn't immediately translate into a change in symptoms. And we really want to catch that new disease sooner, treat it sooner. Even with retinal disease, for example, many patients are asked to report if they use an Amsler grid with AMD, for example. If you see any distortions in a grid, call into the office. It's most likely time for you to have a new treatment or injection, anti-VEGF injection, sooner than later. But again, it's very subjective. Many patients shared with us that they'll keep track of their symptoms on a napkin or on their latest snail mail envelope. And generally, it's hard to understand, what do I report? What is significant enough to share with a doctor? So what we're doing is changing that experience by providing patients and providers with objective data. So from a patient point of view, this can help give peace of mind, and increased stress is tied to increased relapses. So there's a clinical benefit to reducing patient stress. Being able to understand if a patient's feeling a symptom, is that connected with disease that should be treated? When it comes to underserved communities, so we define that as examples, rural communities who are outside of a specialty clinic zone. They can't quickly access something like OCT. It also includes people who are low mobility. It's difficult for them to get to a clinic, or individuals who are in assisted living homes or nursing homes. So one example with MS, some patients are so severely disabled that they can't complete traditional imaging. So MRI or OCT is not possible. With our device, it's wearable. It can be worn on someone who's disabled, has limited upper body mobility, who has a difficult time being in set positions for prolonged periods of time. And it's also mobile, so we can take it to rural communities, and it's directly connected back to their provider. So a provider can be in one location, and they can now serve a much broader range of patients. It's also important for clinical trials. Many clinical trials rely on the patients that they can directly access. And for OCT, that's people who live within some margin area of a specialty clinic. But now by having a device like this that's accessible, you can now broaden the diversity of patients who were included in these trials. And that is critical for developing treatments and understanding disease progression and whatnot.
Thank you for that explanation. And I think that you've got really a great cause there that you're trying to address with your technology, Sam. Michelle, Xcision's GammaPod system separates itself by delivering higher doses of radiation in one or several large fractions, which you're going to explain to us. So how does this change the traditional treatment model for breast cancer, and how does the patient benefit from this treatment?
Right. So the standard of care treatment model consists of a lumpectomy that's followed by wound healing, and then a course of 15 to 40 daily treatments of radiation for the entire breast, each with a very small amount of dose of radiation that's delivered while the patient is lying on their back. The GammaPod treats a small fraction of the breast tissue, and it focuses on the area where the tumor bed is located in 1 to as many as 5 treatments with a much higher dose, and the patient is lying face down. The incredibly short treatment and healthy tissue sparing technology provides obvious benefits as it relates to the time out of a patient's life that they have to spend accomplishing a curative treatment. But it also does this with less toxicity to the skin, the heart, the lungs, and the chest wall. We can now do that without a clinical trial. We know that this works. You can go in and get treated at any one of our treating sites, not on a clinical trial, and have that done. You can do that today. We have clinical trials that are underway now at almost all of our centers with our device to treat prior to surgery. So while the lump is actually in there, rather than doing a lumpectomy first and then having to wound heal and wait to get your treatments, you can actually do it immediately. And then they're waiting a particular period of time, taking the lump out and doing pathology so that they can determine when do you have a pathological complete response. Because in many other places in the body, the spine, the brain, the lungs, lots of places, they do these treatments on the tumor and they don't take them out because your body just reabsorbs tissue, especially a very tiny, early stage breast cancer is typically, 1 to maybe 1.5 cm big. So these are tiny little tumors that could be easily treated, with very little radiation because it's so tiny, rather than coming in and cutting it out, wound healing, dealing with going to the hospital, having surgery, having all these things, right? So, and then of course you're dealing with applying radiation to a much larger target because you've taken the lump out, right? So you have bigger and bigger and bigger targets. So you're having to deliver more radiation to the patient. So obviously the benefits are you're only having to go a few times. There are many places, even in the United States, many places, especially the flyover states, where people are 500 miles from where they have to go to get radiation oncology. Can you imagine having to do that and just, okay, I'm going to take a 3 to 8 week time out and just go live somewhere else, pay for all of those expenses because I can't travel that way back and forth. This is ridiculous, right? So there's a huge problem with patient compliance, not only here in the United States, but definitely across the world. If you're in Africa and you are traveling by foot to get to a center where you could be treated, right? You can just see how traveling one time, getting one treatment that leaves you not needing surgery would be amazingly beneficial to not only the patients, but, to the healthcare system trying to support their population with really inadequate resources.
The benefits are obvious.
Obvious.
So, Michelle, hurry up and get your technology global because it's going to help a lot of people.
I am working with that. I am building a global distribution network right now. And that's one of the things that I'm actually going to be doing through the MedTech Innovator program is, leveraging some of the contacts and stuff too. I have a couple of different areas where I've already got regulatory clearance and I'm looking for a distributor in that area that is the right one. Your partners are really important in this way. They really have to be able to. This is not like it's a $10.99 product that's off the shelf and just needs to be stocked. It's a bit more complicated than that.
Well, you're a perfect lead-in because we're going to go back to the MedTech Innovator program, and you set the stage for what I'm going to ask next. And what does being a part of this program do for you? And what opportunities do you think the MedTech Innovator Program opens up for Sam with JuneBrain? What opportunities has the MedTech Innovator Program opened up for you?
A lot. Even just the summit, it was 3 days with this awesome group of people. Everyone, they're all MedTech nerds. I keep saying that, but that's how I saw them. And it was wonderful. I think for this, it means access to new partnership opportunities and strategic investors in the space. It's a different level of not having to explain the regulatory hurdles or the barriers to entry. It's well known. It's understood. These are challenges others in the cohort have already faced. And that's very nice. The community also is awesome. So it's a network that I think we'll be able to lean on and grow with. I was very not surprised. Just it was nice to see how open people were with swapping their war stories during the summit. Like, oh, I failed at this. It sucked, but I learned from it this way, and you should not make the same mistake. It was great. That's something I think we've needed. My team has needed, I have needed as a CEO. This is my first startup, and there's so much that I don't know. So it's great.
Thank you. That was great. Now, Ellington, talk about the benefits of being involved with that MedTech Innovator Program.
Yeah, it has been tremendous. I think that just piggybacking off of what Sam said, first, I have to pause because she's being entirely too humble. Sam actually was nominated for the Vision Award while we were at this conference, which is she was selected by her peers to present at the Wilson and Cincinnati conference in front of a packed room of investors. And she stood there and moved all of us in telling and sharing her story. And so I think that for her, it wasn't just the summit, it was the ability to really tell her story among so many powerful investors, colleagues, and peers. And everyone left, I think, with a big place for JuneBrain in their hearts. In investors, I think, opportunity on her cap table. So bravo there, Sam, on that.
Thank you. That's very kind.
By the way, if you're going to raise $1 million or another 185,000 and you have this opportunity, don't stop there. You need to have a bigger ask. Okay. Because it takes as much time to raise 5 million as it does $100,000. So go for a bigger close there, Sam.
Well said. I agree. Encouraging her to do the exact same. And I think this will be an oversubscribed round for sure. But the experience was dynamic. It is in that trading of war stories, and I think that there were 17 women in the whole cohort. So being able to also find your people is also so important. But I think that for us, Paul Grand, the CEO, said, 1/3 of all of health med tech funding that was achieved last year, 1/3 of those companies were actually MedTech innovator companies. So we have essentially gone through what I like to consider we're in the Harvard of accelerators, and just being associated and affiliated.
How about the Johns Hopkins of accelerators?
Thank you, Richard. A standing ovation is needed for that. I agree with you. It is the Hopkins of healthcare accelerator.
We have Harvard in our backyard with Johns Hopkins and University of Maryland. So why talk about somebody outside of our region?
Yeah, Boston, where is that again?
Yeah, right.
So, yeah. So it has been dynamic, just again, to build these relationships, to get the guidance that we need. And also when it comes to hardware is hard, guys, right? And so having really great resources that are used to running this gauntlet and being there and prepared to receive you has also been an absolute blessing. So I feel personally very fortunate to be a part of this cohort.
Great. Thank you. And then, Michelle, you talked briefly about some of the benefits of the MedTech Innovator Program for you and what you're looking for. So maybe you might expound on that a little bit.
Yeah. So for anybody who's actually not familiar with what this thing is, so this, we call it MTI, MedTech Innovator, MTI Incubator Program, right? It's very beneficial to Xcision in that we're involved in this ecosystem of MedTech company CEOs, president leaders, their organizations, mentors, partners, investors, and providers of services, CRO services to design build services, all kinds of different kinds of services who are focused on helping us, these people in the program, grow. So, the learning from each other, from them, the access to resources, to knowledge, to just things that you can do, connections to people, key opinion leaders, people in your space. Oh, I know this person, can do marketing for you. This person can do market access for you. I had such great success with this thing, that kind of thing. Funding is super key. Like nothing happens without funding, right? And visibility. Look at this podcast, they're really key to a small company. We don't have millions of dollars to market ourselves or to pay for certain information. You have limited resources, and your products have to be fantastic to even get to this point, right? And even then, it's hard to do what you need to do without all of these resources, not just money, but the resources and connections. And so it's super beneficial. I'm so, so happy, so blessed to have been chosen.
Yeah, and we have probably a lot of listeners that never knew about the MedTech Innovator program and might be interested in applying next year for the program. So from each of you, talk a little bit about the application and selection process that you had to go through and what kind of an experience it was. So, Sam, why don't we start with you this time?
Sure. So this was my third time applying. So if you do apply and you get rejected, just keep trying. So we applied the first year of JuneBrain and second year. And then this past year, I applied to the main accelerator and the MedTech Color spinoff. And we got into MedTech Color, and it was a pitch competition. We placed second, which allowed us to go into the road show in Baltimore. And then from there, we were invited to do the big accelerator. So the selection process, they're very thorough. And I think they even shared, they are very thoughtful about each cohort. So they evaluate each company thoroughly, and they try their best to really choose the best of the best. The cream of the cream is what they kept saying. I hadn't heard that before. So yeah, but it's a straightforward process. Just keep trying if you don't get it the first time.
Great. Well, congratulations on the third try. Ellington, how many times did you try?
We applied twice, and I think that it's like a total of, ultimately it's like 60 people are involved in evaluating not only your pitch, but your full application. And they are from all elements of our industry. So whether that's regulatory, reimbursement, manufacturing, R&D and development, and then of course the clinical component. And so what's so great is when you are accepted, you really get that just feeling of, wow, this has been vetted by some of the best in the world, and they chose us. And that's what's so exciting. And I mean, this was my second time. The first time I was pitching, and I'll never forget, I'm in like one of those round table discussions, and this woman annihilated my reimbursement strategy. She was like, none of this makes sense. How could this be successful? And I was sitting there and I'm like, oh my gosh, she did not hold any punches. And she says, but call me after this. So I call her afterwards. She's now actually one of my board members, because I said, help me. What I do know is that I'm coachable and I'm always ready to learn. I'm a forever student. So let's roll up our sleeves. And together, as we redefined our reimbursement strategy, I really think that's what allowed us to be then accepted this year. And now I'm excited for all the other things that I'm going to learn along the way, because I'm sure there's a lot to come.
I hate to ask, but that's not one of my entrepreneurs in residence, was it?
No, but I want to meet all of your entrepreneurs.
Oh, okay. We have 18 of them now, but that sounds like one that would ask that kind of question. I'm sorry. Okay.
I love that.
And then Michelle, talk about your experience in the application process.
So the application process was really easy. We did only do it this one time. I never even heard of MedTech Innovator, but I got an email that said, oh, here's this thing and you have this opportunity, and I looked at it and I said, oh, we have the opportunity to get non-dilutive funding. Great. I'm applying. So I did. I had no idea what I was getting into at all, none whatsoever. But what a happy accident. I mean, it was just fantastic. They're incredibly thorough. I will say that. So I did the virtual pitches. I didn't do the one in Baltimore. I did a virtual pitch. And now I'm so glad that I did. It was a very different type of environment. I had never done a pitch in my life for money. Our CEO just deals with that, and I sort of run the company and stuff, and I do sales to customers and I know the product and do those kinds of things, but I never pitched for money before. So for me, it was a fantastic growing opportunity. And I thought to myself, well, I mean, we're looking for $7 million or $18 million, so I'm like, okay, $300,000, how bad can it be if I screw up, right? Turns out it's like one of the best things that ever happened. It's the potential for non-dilutive funding. Sure, that's great. That's wonderful. But that's not really the value that you get out of this kind of a program. Like everybody's a winner. I went into thinking that it was really just a competition, constant competitions like Shark Tank or something. I had no idea what to expect. So it was just a real surprisingly collegiate curation of people together that are truly supporting one another. And it was just a fantastic experience. And I felt like I was drinking out of a fire hose for 3 days, trying to take in as much information as I could out of these people who were fantastic and had so much to share and to give over the program. And I'm really looking forward to the next year as we go through that. I would encourage anybody, definitely go through the process, because going through the process and really having to detail out your strategy and what you're doing and where you are with each thing, reimbursement, product development, regulatory strategy, having to really think that through. If you haven't really put a lot of detail into it, you need to if you're going to be successful. And this gives you that sort of focus and getting good feedback in the process. Fantastic.
Thank you. So I guess the key is for those who have not applied yet, if you have a medical device diagnostic or digital health company and are looking for feedback as well as potentially non-dilutive funding and an ongoing process, the MedTech Innovator program is a great program to get engaged with. So I know we're getting close to an end here, and I want to close by focusing on something close to my heart, and that is that you're all part of what we call the BioHealth Capital Region, which is fourth leading biohealth cluster in the United States. Just found out through another study, we're the top 3 in talent in the United States. So there's a new study that just came out and said that we are the 3rd highest ranked talent region in the biohealth industry in the United States. So our goal of being a top 3 by 2023 has at least been achieved in the talent area. And you all know how important that is. But I want to ask each of you what the benefits are of being headquartered in Columbia and Baltimore are in the BioHealth Capital Region, and what this region has done for you to help grow your companies. So Ellington, we'll let you start off.
I feel so fortunate to have headquartered and founded my company here in Baltimore. The support that has been wrapped around our success is unmatched. And I know that because I've met so many other founders in other states that have struggled to just have their voice amplified and to have resources intentionally made available for them. Whether it's been working with Colin from the Baltimore Development Corporation or Christy Weiskel at Johns Hopkins Tech Transfer, there has just been so much support of companies, private partnerships, and folks who just say, we are so committed to creating innovative solutions in life sciences that we will stop at nothing to ensure your success. And I think that that's kind of that small town, small state, throw a little I think it's like Charm City with a little Southern charm, but also this extreme precision and focus on competition and success that makes us so unique and so special. And then don't even get me started on clinical trials and the access that I have to hospital systems. I mean, for us to have 3 trials in 3 Maryland state hospitals is huge to me. And again, comes from a willingness from our community to support our success. And then I have CMS right here in Baltimore. So if I have a question, if I need resources, these folks are here and they're ready and willing to help us. And then I'm a hop, skip, jump away from DC when it comes to advocating for policy that impacts the trajectory of our technology and success. So if all of these things are less than 30 minutes away from me, and that there are people coming out of the woodwork to support me, but then on top of it, based on basically what Rich just said, the fact that we are now on everyone's radar, that means that we you're on investors' radars as well. So those limiting factors that used to exist based on capital structure and limitation based on geography is completely out of the window. And I forgot, sorry, I'm almost done. I just clearly love where we are, is that, talent acquisition. It's not just that we have some of the best talent, it's that they can afford to live here. They can afford to grow their families here. And then I have great employer retention. So, I just feel incredibly lucky. I'm not going anywhere. And I swear to you, I was in Austin 2 weeks ago and someone said, "Oh my God, you're from Baltimore?" And I was like, "Well, what's next? The Wire?" And they're like, "No, this is this incredible MedTech hub." And I just felt so great. And I think about Bob's story over at Launchport, who will stop at nothing to make sure that Baltimore stays in that top 3. And Rich, we were so lucky in getting you from Philly. It was probably the best thing that ever happened to this region. So I'm just thrilled across the board, and I'm done. I'm off my soapbox, but I'm just so thrilled to be here.
That was a paid testimonial from Ellington West, the co-founder and CEO of Sonavi Labs. So, Sam, how can you top that? What do you want to add to that about the benefits of being in the BioHealth Capital Region?
I cannot top that. I'll just say ditto. Ditto to everything Ellington just said. And the people she name dropped, yes, they have been awesome. I'd say for us, again, all of the above, proximity to our primary collaborators has been awesome because we work with Hopkins. We license software from Hopkins. We're working with UMB on clinical studies. It's nice to have everyone so close. We can literally just take our latest prototype, hop across the street, show it to our collaborator. It's nice. And then also what Ellington mentioned about DC advocacy. So one of my favorite groups in this area is 2GI, Together International. They're a group for disabled founders led by Diego Mariscal. He is awesome. And for example, one of the initiatives they have is to get better access to startup resources and funding for disabled founders who are often not considered, or there's still a stigma attached, and erasing all of that. It's very unique to be in a place where I can do JuneBrain, but also participate or help out with those types of efforts that are very impactful. So yes, this is a great place.
Thank you, Sam. Michelle, what's left to be said about our region?
Oh, there's actually quite a bit. So we are really in great debt to, and if you have not taken advantage of this, pay attention. The Maryland Biotechnology Investment Tax Credit Program. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that. I would also name the FDA, and for us, the NRC, and the Maryland Department of Environment, not to mention the University of Maryland. So the proximity made frequent personal communication available. These agencies, people in these agencies, I was so surprised. I heard a lot of people like, "Oh, I'm so afraid of going and talking to the FDA. I'm like, "Are you kidding?" Like, those are the best conversations, right? You don't go in there and be adversarial. These people have seen everything, right? They know, they want you to be successful. They're there to service the American population and to make sure that they're protected. And so anything that they are asking you for is typically in your best interest to do it, because if you have a mistake or you don't do something properly, you can hurt somebody in this business. And that's the last thing any of us want to do, right? So, you learn and you grow through these conversations, through these dialogues. I would also say the University of Maryland Technology Transfer Office has just been fantastic to work with. These, as everybody was saying, there's so much infrastructure here. I would also say, for us, Howard County has the largest population of PhDs in the nation. We have the number one school system in all of the nation. Like, Maryland has got the top schools. We've got the number one library system. We have amazing parks. You think about just the natural beauty of our area here too. And, attracting and retaining people to come to this area. And they don't have to send their kids to private schools and stuff. They can just be in their communities. And it's just a really wonderful place. I've only been in Maryland for 12 years. But I think we were kind of talking about this before the podcast even started. I love it here. This is really an amazing place. And just for MedTech companies, it's fantastic. The ecosystem is here to really help you be successful. So,
What a great way to close a podcast talking about the great attributes we have and assets within our region. So I want to thank all three of you for being here on a very unique podcast. All three are winners and part of the MedTech Innovator competition. Three female successful entrepreneurs from the state of Maryland going to represent us when you all go to California later in this year. So congratulations to all of you. We've had Ellington West, CEO and co-founder of Sonavi Labs. Ellington, thank you for being on. Any last words from you?
Oh, thank you just so much for having me and sharing our story.
You're welcome. Samantha Scott, Sam, founder and CEO of JuneBrain. Thank you for being on BioTalk. Any last words, Sam?
No, thank you as well. This is awesome. It's great that you're highlighting what we're about to experience.
Great.
Over the
Thank
next
you.
few months.
And then Michelle Crawley, President, Xcision Medical Systems. Michelle, thank you for being on BioTalk. Any last words from you?
No, thank you again. The visibility is fantastic. And if anybody's interested, they can go to our website, www.xcision.com, and find out more about us. If you're looking for the closest place to get treated, if you're a patient or you know somebody is with early stage breast cancer or investment or to purchase the system.
Right. Gotcha.
Contact me.
Yeah, I think each of you would basically refer everybody to your websites if they want to learn more information. And somebody mentioned Shark Tank, but I'd be remiss if I didn't say that, we have Crab Trap. We don't have Shark Tank in Maryland. So the 8th edition of Crab Trap's going to be on September 20th. We're going to be calling for applications for you to apply for it. And basically, you'll get a chance to present if you are selected at US Pharmacopoeia in Rockville on September 20th at 10 o'clock in the morning. And there are cash prizes as well as CRO services and other things that will be available. That information will be coming out soon. And the 9th annual BioHealth Capital Region Forum will also be on the 19th and 20th at US Pharmacopoeia. So all of you should attend because it's a great place to network, meet other contacts, and the Crab Trap competition on the 20th is a way to get in front of some world-class judges and get some prizes. So I hope you all have a chance to apply for that. So thank you all for being on this edition of BioTalk. It's been really different and really enlightening to see the energy and enthusiasm all of you bring to your companies and to our region. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to BioTalk with Rich Bendis.